So we'll just get started with some introductions from everybody. Definitions. So if youth ambassadors, you want to introduce yourself real quick and then we can get started.
I guess I'll go first. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm 16. I'm a rising junior from Houston, Texas. I go to Westbury Senior High School. I'm in my school's band. And the reason I wanted to be a youth ambassador was because I feel like my voice wasn't being heard. So I just wanted to make an impact and just try to change some things that I felt were wrong.
Awesome. Maya, and then we'll do Shreya.
Hi, my name is Maya Ledger. I'm 16. I'm going into my junior year of high school. And the reason I wanted to join TCJE is because I wanted little girls that look like me to see that there's someone that's going out and doing something to make a difference in our community.
Hi everyone, my name is Shreya. I'm 17 years old and I'm a rising senior, and I became a youth ambassador because I've always been interested in juvenile justice issues and I've learned so much about it over the years. And though I want to continue to learn through this program, what's most compelling about it is that I have a chance to use that knowledge to make material impact.
Awesome. Thank you guys. So you guys, take it away. I'll just do the little slides.
So before we really get into the meat of the presentation, there's a few definitions that we think might be important before we dive in. Of course, we're going to learn new terms like throughout the presentation, but these might be helpful to know beforehand. So first is in-school suspension, or ISS, and that's a form of discipline in which students are isolated from the rest of the student body and placed in a special classroom where they must complete school assignments and classwork under the supervision of a monitor. Next is exclusionary disciplining. These are school disciplining tactics which exclude or remove students from their usual learning environments. Next is school pushout. This is a process in which students are pressured and or forced to drop out of schooling. Then we have the carceral system, which is the broader network of policing and prison institutions. And finally, punitivity, which is a focus on inflicting punishment.
Okay, this is my part. Hi, I'm Michael. But before I start my presentation, I'd like to say I'm sorry if I yawn in the middle of it. I just got back from band practice. I'm a bit tired, but I'll try my best to not yawn. Sorry. But my first question to you all, you could answer it in the chat if you'd like. What do you think exclusionary discipline means to you?
We have some responses, Michael. I want to read some, if that's cool. We have taking students out of learning environments to experience disciplining kids in a way that excludes them from school, removing students from a learning environment as a form of punishment. And we got a lot going from the chat. So
well, that's exactly right. Exclusionary discipline encompasses any type of school disciplinary action that removes or excludes a student from his or her usual educational setting. So all of those definitions that says removing students from the current educational setting, just removing students, sending kids out, they're right technically. So like examples of exclusionary discipline are like in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, detentions, even expulsions, because you can get one single detention for like 2 days. You can get detention for 2 days and be like, oh, I'm not gonna do my homework when I get home. I'm just gonna put it off. You can just never do your work, and you can just put it off to the next day. And you're never gonna do it. And your grades just gonna slowly fall down. Or you can get in-school suspension. You can just get the work constantly for like a week, but you can still get the work and you're still doing the work, but you never learn the material and you never understand the material fully. And like with out of school suspension, you're sitting at home for like maybe 3 days to a week and you're not learning anything. And when you come back, either the teachers don't even give you the work, or the teachers give you the work and say, you have to give this to me by this date. And they don't give you any help unless you ask, or barely they don't give you any help at all. Like in my school, my friend got suspended for 3 days, which I felt like they shouldn't have been suspended at all. They got suspended for 3 days right before the end of the 6 weeks, and they had to, when they came back, they had to redo so many packets, tests, exams, everything, so many essays just to get their grade back up to the 70. And the teachers didn't even give them really enough help to pass because they just moved on from the material already in those 3 day span. And it's like they were doing the work at lunch and homeroom and every chance they could get to get this work back up. And they were doing it in the same class they're in while they were getting new work for the new 6 weeks to do it before the 6 weeks started. So all this like in school suspension stuff just sets students back and it doesn't even help it. And even with and even with expulsion, you're not even doing anything at home. You're just trying to look for a new school. You're not gonna do any work. You're just sitting at home. And you know, like when I get to my new school, I'm just not gonna do work. I'm just gonna go to school and come right back home. And this transitions into my next topic, actually. What is punitive treatment? So, like, what is punitive treatment to you? You can say that in the chat.
Someone says intended to punish or exert authority, control over, treatment that punishes and doesn't teach. So we got a few.
And those are actually exactly right. So, punitive treatment and punitive treatment believes that punishments can change behavior and that students will accept responsibility through punishment. And this isn't like the same with schools. It's the same with law enforcement and it's the same through everyday life. And most people think that with a punishment you will learn better and you'll just like, oh, I'm never gonna do this again. But you just get a punishment and then you'll probably do the same thing again. You probably won't have the same relationship with that person who gave you that punishment or who's inflicting this on you. You know, like a student can have a short little mess up and then they just get punished. They'll get a detention or they'll get in school suspension or they even get suspended for like a week. They'll be like, this teacher is so strict. They ripped me up for like this little reason. I didn't believe I should have been suspended for this. And it's just a whole big conundrum, one would say, that the student doesn't like the teacher, and in the student's eyes, the teacher doesn't like the student, and then the teacher would not like the student because how they're acting in class now from this write up, which could all be changed from one thing, which is restorative justice. Now, this also transitions into my other topic. What is restorative justice to you guys? You can also answer that in the chat as well.
We got teaching, healing, and conflict resolution to make situation whole, mutually beneficial accountability, tries to get at the root cause of the situation, some of them.
And those are actually right about restorative justice. Now, the definition I've written down for restorative justice is restorative justice is an approach to address crime or conflict, and it focuses on the needs of victims to heal from harm they incurred. It increases offender accountability to repair the actual harm caused and includes impacted community members to assist all in developing terms of how to best move forward. Now, you're probably wondering, how does this have to do anything with schools when I'm talking about crime and victims and all this stuff? Well, just one excerpt I'm saying from what I just said has everything to do with it. And it focuses on the needs of victims to heal from the harm they incurred and it increases offender accountability to repair the actual harm caused. Like, let's say a student just breaks something in the classroom. Like they somehow break a desk. I don't know how you break a desk, but they break a desk somehow. Instead of the teacher writing up the student and saying, "Oh, I'm gonna just get this. I'm gonna just write up the student and then get a new desk some other day." The teacher could say, "Oh, you can go get this desk for me from the storage room, and then we can fix this and we can have a talk about it." Every time in the real world, it's not going to be a punishment for everything. You have to fix it yourself. Like if you're living by yourself, you break something, you're not just going to get punished for it randomly. You're living by yourself. You have to fix it yourself. In schools, you shouldn't be getting punished for very little things and very minuscule things that can be fixed with just a conversation between the teacher and the student. It could also build a better relationship with teacher and student. Like it's that would just better everything. And then the student, like with punitive treatment, instead of punishing them, and the student's like, "Oh, this teacher is so strict." With restorative justice and restorative justice, my fault. Uh, yeah, restorative justice approach to students. They could like, oh, this teacher talked to me when I broke something, when I did something wrong. They gave me a second chance. This teacher is very like understanding of me. This teacher could like actually someone you could talk to, and it's just a better relationship between the teacher and the student. Now, now this also goes to my next topic, which is how does a restorative justice approach better schools? Number one, it gives, like I just said, it gives people chances to build better relationships off of mistakes with teachers and vice versa. Like, like I just said, you break something or you do something wrong to the teacher or another student. The teacher can talk to you, try to fix it, try to fix the situation there, and try to have a conversation with you and try to fix the root of the problem in school instead of just writing you up and sitting you detention, ultimately making the problem worse over and over and over again. And number two, it gives people second chances. Everyone needs a second chance, in my opinion. Like, just I remember when I was in middle school and I did something completely wrong, and my teacher was like, "I understand why you did this. I'll just give you a second chance. I won't write you up." I felt so grateful I had that teacher, and it just made me feel good having that teacher. And I just never did that thing ever again, bro. Ever again. So every student, I believe, should have a second chance in a classroom or in any type of situation in school, because that first mistake, they probably didn't even mean to do it. And if they did mean to do it, they could talk to them and make them understand why this is wrong and try to fix it. And three, it's to look at the real world in a way, because if you go to your job and you like the first month or two, you're just beginning. They won't fire you for any minuscule mistake they make. They'll try to help you and try to fix the little mistakes you're making. In middle school and high school, we shouldn't be suspending our kids and giving them detention and giving them in-school suspensions and even expelling them for the minuscule mistakes that they make now and at such a young age. We should be trying to help them and try to rehabilitate them and trying to make them better people, and so that down the line they don't do this at a higher level. And that's my presentation. Thank you all for listening, and I can't wait to conversation you guys at the Q&A portion.
Hi, I'm Maya once again, and I'm going to read you guys my part about the intro to school to prison pipeline. I'm going to start off by doing some informative and then go into an example and then tell it in my point of view. All right. So the school to prison pipeline is a process through which students are pushed out of school and into prison. In other words, it's a process of criminalizing youth that is carried out by disciplinary policies and practices in schools that put students into contact with law enforcement. Article quoted from Google. Have you ever been to school and felt more like a target than a student? Most of our answers should be no, because school is supposed to be a safe environment where children shouldn't fear waking up in the morning and shouldn't fear that those four walls will turn against them. Most students have the comfort of knowing that they will graduate, get a nice job, and live out their days raising a family. Well, unfortunately, most of those students at those schools are probably white, and most of them have resources and benefits of the doubt because of their skin color, which is obviously a recurring issue, because why they get painted as misunderstood, we as minorities are gang members, terrorists, or illegal immigrants, and are told that we're going to end in prison one way or another, so what's the point of trying? A show that projects on how minorities are affected in the justice system is Good Trouble. One of the main characters worked in a lower tide school where she sees firsthand on how the students are treated and made out to think that they will eventually end up in jail. This goes to show the injustice in the school system. Further in the story, the students are on a 3-strike you're back to juvie rule, and that's if they break the simplest rule. My question is, why would the school choose to send these kids back if the program is supposed to keep them out of juvie? To answer that, it's because the school could care less if these kids ended up going back, as long as they get the funding to continue these programs. Schools are about bettering education, not building a prison-like environment, preparing students for life behind bars. Onto a more personal story. As a minority, I have faced a lot of injustice in the school system. I have a lot of people underestimating me because of the color of my skin, and also because I'm a woman, which is obviously misfortunate, because a lot of the time people paint this narrative about me and are shocked when they actually get to know me. There have been many times in my life people will say, "Wow, we didn't expect you to sound so proper," or "I'm shocked that you even know what that means." When people look at me or any minority that they don't see as a person who loves they don't see as a person who loves reading or who loves to sew, they see a target, someone who doesn't belong. To end my speech, hoping you are able to build a better understanding of what it's like being a minority in a school system. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, guys. This is my section. I'm Shreya. So, according to a report that was published by the NAACP, the number of students barred from accumulating knowledge as a result of suspensions, expulsions, and arrests has remained dangerously high since 2000. We've already covered how a punitive mindset when it comes to discipline shapes school policy. And as soon as Amani gets in, we will cover how the carceral system is physically present in schools. Now, I'm going to build off of Mia's great section and tell you a bit about how these two phenomena funnel students into the school to prison pipeline, beginning with the physical presence of police in schools. According to a study supervised by Jeremy Prim and UC Davis, schools with SROs suspend students 67% more often, and after adding SROs, school suspensions and expulsions increased by 21%. For your information, SROs, or school resource officers, are police officers that are stationed at schools. SROs increase the school to prison pipeline through their contact with students for minor incidents that shouldn't warrant police contact. According to a report published by Chelsea Connery with the UConn Center for Education Policy Analysis, 77% surveyed SROs reported they'd arrested a student to calm them down. 55% reported arresting just because a teacher asked them to. This incapability to effectively perform their jobs means that their presence in schools has done more harm than good in terms of student-officer relations, especially in minority communities. Difference in SRO's perceived duties is apparent when a survey found that in schools that are majority white and in suburban districts, SROs thought their purpose was to protect the students from outside threats, but in schools mostly made up of racial minority students, they perceived the threats as students themselves. The introduction of officers to the American education system has embedded it within the punishment paradigm, molding students to believe that education is not a right, but rather a privilege that can be stripped away for the most minor infractions, funneling the American youth into the criminal justice system. But the school to prison pipeline doesn't just start at the presence of officers. It's epistemological and it runs deep. It's a punitive mindset that defines school policy, especially when it comes to exclusionary school disciplining. As Michael mentioned earlier, ISS, out of school suspensions, and expulsions pile up, resulting in students falling behind in classes, sports, and feeling like no one believes in them. These stressors are a primary reason why, according to the data collected by the Minaret Foundation, over 1/3 of Texas public school students drop out every year, which can have serious downstream effects as high school dropouts are over 3 times as likely to be incarcerated than graduates, and in fact make up over 80% of Texas prison populations. While that data is specific to our home state, the feeding of youth into the carceral system by school pushout is a national phenomenon. As you've already been told, in addition to arrests and involvement with the carceral system, school pushout also functions through exclusionary school discipline like suspensions and expulsions. There are 2 categories of this which each feed the school to prison pipeline in a different way: zero tolerance and discretionary. Let's start off with zero tolerance. Can y'all tell us in the chat what that is? Does anybody have an idea? Okay, harsh discipline for any minor infraction. Yes. Immediately excluding the child for an infraction. Yeah. No second chances. That's correct too. 1 strike and you're out. No gray areas. Yes. All of these things are exactly right. And since y'all have got the exact definition down, I'm going to tell y'all a story. The year is 2016. And Anthony Ruelas, a student at a Texas public school, breaks 3 rules worthy of severe punishment in the span of 5 minutes. He disregarded the commands of his teacher and cussed vehemently and grabbed his classmate Tishka Fisher. In the oh-so-objective eyes of the school penal code, he was negligent, disrespectful, and endangered the life of his peer. But in reality, what Anthony Ruelas did that day saved the life of his classmate, who had collapsed to the floor as a result of a severe asthma attack. So yes, he disregarded the instructions to not move while the teacher, burdened by administrative tape, was forced to wait on an email reply from the school nurse. He cussed like a panicked and frustrated child watching a classmate gag and writhe on the floor while no one did anything except wait, and grabbed Fisher, hauling her to the nurse's office himself, saving her life in the process. And then he was suspended for 2 days. The predetermined consequence for his actions as a result of zero tolerance policies that disregard all context and circumstance in favor of objectivity. It's a mindset that favors viewing children with a presumption of criminality and bad intentions. That context is not necessary because it is unlikely that the infringement occurs with good intentions, like in the case of Anthony Ruelas. Students don't have to enter the prisons or be detained by an SRO to be perceived as criminals. The carceral mentality, which represents the start of the school to prison pipeline, has already infiltrated the classrooms. But the carceral mentality isn't just present in the zero tolerance section of exclusionary school discipline. Zero tolerance is especially problematic since the so-called objectivity that is crusaded as the biggest benefit of itself and other mandatory discipline policies doesn't even exist. A landmark study by professors at Villanova University found that only 3% of students had broken rules with exclusionary practices mandated by zero tolerance, but 97% of school suspensions were the choice of school administrators, and the majority of said discretionary suspensions were 31% more likely to be used against Black students as opposed to non-POC students for infractions of the same severity. In fact, according to the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights, the disparity between the number of white students subjected to out-of-school disciplining and the number of students of color suspended has tripled since 1970. Such blatantly discriminatory uses of exclusionary discipline have been paraded around under zero tolerance's veil of objectivity. The punitive mindset of school discipline disparately targets students of color, pushing them out of schools, and eventually it works to push them into prisons. That's my section.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So our next portion that we have is some real life scenarios that I gathered from from different schools around Texas that have happened. And like I said, definitely want this to be as interactive as possible with the audience, but also wanting to give everybody a chance to kind of hear from the youth and what their kind of opinion is on the situation, and maybe how it should have been handled differently, if anything at all. So want to ask a few questions around those. So we can start. We are expecting one of our other youth ambassadors to hop on, and I would love to give her an opportunity to present. So if she does hop on, I would like her to present after this, but she's just running a little late. So we'll just continue. Okay, so let me see. So this is the first scenario. So a student in Georgetown ISD, just north of Austin, bought a vape pen from a classmate that he said he thought contained CBD oil. Another student reported it to the assistant principal, who then pulled him out of the class the next morning before calling Georgetown police. The police tested the pen's substances, and they found that THC was in the pen. THC is a felony offense in Texas, so they put the student in handcuffs and took him to jail. Because he was 17, he was considered an adult in the Texas criminal justice system. For hours, he sat alone in a cell at the Williamson County Jail. He spent the next 2 months in one of the 30 juvenile justice alternative education programs across the states, which was created to educate students who commit crimes so serious that must be removed from their home. And so the questions that I'm going to be asking, they're all going to be the same for these scenarios. So please use the chat, or, if you want to come off mute, love to hear from you as well. So one of the first questions was the response by the administration appropriate? Would love to hear from youth justice ambassadors as well. And y'all can come off mute.
Personally, in my opinion, I don't think that the response by the administrative was like the right approach to go. And yes, the pen did contain THC, which I'm guessing is a felony. I still don't think it was like the right thing to do, like send someone to juvie for doing something that kids do all around. Because I'm pretty sure he wasn't the first person in the school to do it, and probably won't be the last person. Their approach, I don't think, was exactly appropriate, like calling the cops, sending him away for 2 months. I think that it could have been like, there could have been a better way to do it.
We have someone in the chat saying never appropriate to charge a child as an adult, and definitely not necessary to arrest him for an incident that caused zero harm. Yeah, for sure. So the next question we kind of have is, Maya, you kind of leading up to it, like, what would you change about how the situation was handled? What would you have done differently, instead of, arresting a 17-year-old kid, and, taking them out of their classroom environment? What are some things you would like to have seen?
Well, I don't think it's appropriate at all for schools to discipline children, because it's like not their right. And I'm sure he's going to be in trouble with his parents once he gets home for doing this action. And school's supposed to be a safe place, because like if you're having trouble at home, you're supposed to get the 8 hours of the day to like feel safe and feel welcome before you have to go back to all your like real problems. So I don't think the school should have done anything at all. Like I think they should have informed the parent what's going on and maybe asked him not to bring it back. But I think that putting him in juvie essentially, or jail, because he was charged as an adult, and then sending him to like an alternative school for 2 months, that could affect him down the long run. Like let's say he wants to go to colleges could see that he has a record, like that could stop him like from getting a job, all because he brought a THC pen that didn't affect anyone except him and taking it.
Yeah. So other youth ambassadors have thoughts?
I have a couple, and so I guess I'll start from the bottom up of like what happened chronologically. Yeah. So first, it said that the crime that the student committed was so serious that that student had to be removed from their home and their school. But once again, like I can't see like anywhere in this whole scenario if there's like any detailing of that student actively causing harm to another student. And also in the beginning, like if you go a little further up, it talks about how the student claims that they weren't aware of the fact that the pen had like THC in it. So there's a presumption of like a bad intent that they're making by involving the police and sending him away. Like they don't believe the student. They're assuming that the student is lying when they're saying they don't know that there's THC. And then if you go up, like it says that it's a felony offense, which is why he was put into like these education programs and like sent away and stuff. But I think somebody said this in the chat. Students should never like kids should never be prosecuted as adults. Like there is a reason. There's like so many. We can't vote because we're not adults. Why are we punished for other policies that have been voted by other adults? Like that should not apply to us. Why are we being prosecuted as an adult if we don't get to make those decisions? That's just that doesn't make any sense. That's like super hypocritical. And then let's say like you go further up, another student reported what the student did to like the principal. That's where it should have stayed. It shouldn't have, like, they should not have involved the police. Like if a school is incapable of handling these issues, if they're incapable of like persuading their students and giving them actual useful education, if they think it's useful in any other way than like deterrence and introducing police to try to scare them straight, then there's an issue with the education system, and schools are not functioning for the exact purpose that they're supposed to be able to function. So that's my thoughts.
And then we have somebody saying that, you know, another thing could have done is ask why the student had the vape pen, if there was an underlying anxiety or type of issue that had the opportunity to find that out and get some assistance. And then we have someone totally inappropriate and harmful reaction, agree no charging adults and should not have involved the police. Talking to him would have been the way to go. It kind of sounds like that's the same pattern that we're all kind of talking about, is, you know, really getting to the issue. And so kind of moving on to the next question we have for this is, does this circumstance align with your aforementioned idea of a safe school environment?
I mean, not really, because if you get caught with something, all the students gonna be afraid of getting caught with something, because then they're gonna know, oh, they're gonna bring the police into it, and then, oh, I'm gonna get sent away, or oh, they just have that fear in the back of their mind of like getting caught with something. So either they're gonna still do it or just try to like have it like a little more like sneaky. I don't know how to say it, but you know, they're gonna try to be a little more sneaky with it, or they're just not gonna do it and still have that fear. If they try to catch them with something or say you had this, they're gonna get sent away. That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah.
My opinion on it is that, like, in a lot of the ways, like, if you take something away from a child, or if you like let it know, like, you will get hard consequences, that like if you do this you'll get in a lot of trouble. I think a lot of children like, oh, we're just going to do it even more, and we're just going to hide it better, and we're just going to do that just so they could, like, you know, feel some sort of power, or feel like they're like kind of winning the argument. So when the schools like go so hard and like send away, like, say someone's friend for doing drugs, like the drugs are still going to like be around the school, just sending them away for 6 to 3 months, like they're going to eventually come back and the same thing's just going to happen again.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would love to hear from maybe some parents too. And like, how would you feel if this is, you know, you got a call saying your kid had a THC pen and now he's potentially facing a felony offense? You know, what would you have liked to see happen instead?
This is Tracy. I'll just hop in and say that, you know, I would hope folks would call me and let me know what's going on with my kid before they call the police, and got them, you know, wrapped up into a system, and I'm not even sure how I can, you know, get them out of it when, you know, this, like someone said in the chat, right? It could have been something going on with them, anxiety. Maybe I need to get them, you know, some help and, you know, some therapy, or just, you know, to their pediatrician to find out what might be going on with them. And so, you know, just a call from the principal, I think goes a long way. And so that's something that I would appreciate as a parent.
Yeah, it sounds like we have Melissa agreeing with you, Tracy. I would have been very upset and outraged as parents, would have wanted a school to call me and talk to me and my child. And we have someone saying this perfect opportunity for a counselor to be involved. Like, I think someone earlier mentioned that, like, there's a lot of confusion between CBD and like THC, and like even police officers don't know how to identify that, you know what I mean? And so like, why was he doing this? Was this something to cope with? You know, I think we're all kind of like saying the same thing. It sounds like yeah, and then it's I'm not a parent, but it's unacceptable for a 17-year-old student to sit alone in a cell for hours. Yeah, I completely agree. Cool. Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the next scenario we have. And so let me see. So a senior at Barber Hills High School in Mount Bellevue in Southeast Texas wouldn't be allowed to return to school or attend his graduation ceremony unless he cut his dreadlocks. He said he had dreadlocks for years and said it was part of his identity and culture. Barber Hill Independent School District officials insisted it's not about race and that it allows dreadlocks but has rules about length. So same questions. Was the response by the administration appropriate? We got a no, a screaming no in the chat. Another screaming no, absolutely not. Yeah, same page. I think we're all on the same page. Youth, what do y'all think?
I don't think it's appropriate at all, because as a Black person, our hair is like a big part of our identity. So when we braid our hair or put in protective styles, it's most of the time to protect it, and so it won't be like out. And it's really hard to like control and like especially tame my hair. So most of the times I like have braids in just so like it won't be in the way. But telling somebody to cut their hair because they have like a specific rule on length. What about like a white person's hair? Do they all have to cut their hair because it's a specific length, or is it just that one person? I think it had nothing to do with the length, because they didn't make every white person go ahead and like cut their hair off and like, oh, you have to graduate because your hair has to be like shortcut or like 4 inches. They made that specific student do it because they were targeting him.
So what would you have changed about the situation and like how it was handled? If this was the district's official rule about length, right? What, as an administration from Barber Hills School, how would you have handled the situation?
I think there should never have been a situation. Sorry, I think there should never have been a situation personally, because it's not that big of a deal that the student has dreadlocks in. I don't think that the administration should have had a sat down talk at all and be like, oh, let's decide what we're going to do about his hair, because it's not their hair at the end of the day, it's his.
Yeah, we have no reason to ever regulate students' hair. Yeah. You got a lot of agreement, Maya. There should never have been a situation in the beginning. Yeah. So kind of got to ask the same question too about, parents, or, if you're, an adult in this situation, you get this call, what is your thoughts, reactions, kind of this, how would you wish this had been handled, instead of, an administration coming and saying, hey, you can't graduate unless you cut your hair off. We have someone would have just ignored it as administrator. Yeah, Sharia pointed out, we don't see them doing this with kids with mullets, and that's definitely that's come back for sure. Nice. We would repeal it as an administrator. Someone said, if anything, mullets should be banned. I personally agree with that. Yeah, if we didn't need to cut his hair in school, he shouldn't have needed to cut it for graduation. Yeah, it seems like it might have been like more of a presentation thing than anything. He was going to be seen by like families. It may not have aligned with whatever it is that they align with. Yeah. Cool. So does this circumstance align again with your idea of a safe school environment? Youth, everybody, come off chat.
If I gotta go to my graduation and I gotta cut my hair, I'm not cutting it, because that like I've waited, like people, like Black people, when they lock up their hair, they wait so long for get to the length they want. They maintain it so long, and then hairdressers too. It's so much work. Like my mom, if this was me and my mom knowing the work she put on my hair, she would say, nah, you wearing a ball cap or something. You're not cutting it. Cause I'm not cutting my hair just to graduate high school, and then just start the process all over again like a week later. I'm not doing that.
Someone said, can't imagine how hairstyles impact safety, but creating resentment by doing something like this does not create a healthy school environment. Yeah. Our last scenario. A sixth grader was said to be missing online school during the pandemic. However, his school district only counts kids' presence in some classes if they both show up and submit their homework for the day. And some of the homework hadn't been reaching their teachers due to apparent on the school's online platform, or just in case of not being handed in. Now, this parent was slapped with a truancy notification, which states that the offense is a misdemeanor, punishable by fines ranging from 100 for the first offense up to 500 for each additional offense. Again, was the response by the administration appropriate?
Not at all. So for me, my entire 10th grade, I was virtual. So at like the entire school year, I was online. And I know that there were some crazy technological issues. Like the teacher would send me and like the two other kids that were online the wrong worksheet, and then we would like point it out, and just they would just keep on teaching the other worksheet, and we'd be doing like a third grade worksheet, stuff like that. Like it happens all the time, technological issues, and the fact that the school doesn't even have a little bit of consideration or like empathy, or they don't even fix their problems, they don't make school more accessible or easier, and they don't like try to understand what like the challenges that the student is facing are. It's just like that is not a safe or healthy learning environment. And even more than that, slapping a fine on the parents, that's like even worse, because the pandemic was like a really hard time for so many people, especially like when it comes to like financially. And if you're gonna charge, just slap parents of students that are not like, or that even if the student was like not at school, they're going to charge them with like fines and stuff, that's even worse, because now they're like they need to make that money like back, and they need to work even harder, and they have less time to like actually pay attention to what's going on. You're just giving them more and more duties and obligations.
I want to add on to what Shreya said. During the pandemic, it was a really hard time. Personally, for me and my family, I have like 8 siblings. So it'd be like 8 of us using the Wi-Fi. So obviously, I don't think our Wi-Fi is like that built for like 8 different people. And then my mom was working from home. So like times our Wi-Fi would just like give out, or it would just start like kicking people off. So I would be like mid-lesson and my teacher saying something important, but then I'd get kicked off the Wi-Fi due to the fact that there's like a lot of people on it. So like, and I like was really nervous. I didn't want to tell my teacher. I was like, oh yeah, my Wi-Fi is not working, or I don't know, I just don't like speaking up. So like I would just keep my mouth closed, and I would like miss different parts of the lesson, and I would like have to stay back and just like, try to focus and try to like figure out how to do this problem, because I like wasn't taught how to do it. And sometimes I would like miss that class because it took a minute for like the Wi-Fi to kick back on, and I would get marked absent, and they would like email my parents, and it was just like really big deal. So they like didn't even ask the 6th grader if they were going through any other issues. Like there could have been like financial problems, and do we know if the school provided that student a computer? We don't know the issue, like, because they only give you, I believe, like 1 computer. So if that computer breaks, like you have to figure it out. Like what if that student computer like broke it, they admitted, like, handed it to them. I think that they should have like went in a little bit more and investigated a little more, just instead of like sending a truancy, especially during the pandemic, which was really hard time for everyone. So like I totally agree with what Shreya.
Yeah, that leads us in. That's perfect, Maya. What would you change about how the situation was handled? Yeah, like really talking to them and finding out what was going on. When I was reading this article, actually, they were saying that the 6th grader was having a really, really, really hard time with like being online, and was having like a lot of anxiety, having trouble in school, and like everything that you were saying, right, Maya? But like nobody decided to reach out until like, this became like an article on the Texas Tribune, right? Like nobody knew what was happening until this, got to this point. And so, yeah, I feel like you hit it right nail on the head.
Sorry.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Mine just going to be a quick 5 seconds. I just wanted to say that the internet's like really damaging. And I remember going to the doctor's office one day, and they asked me how long like I'd been online for. And I was like, oh, like 34 plus hours, like in a day, that I was just staring at a screen all day. And I don't think that's like the best environment for a 6th grader to like have this technology and constantly be on the internet like 24/7.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I had to buy blue light glasses because my eyes were just like going through it. It was horrible. But anyway, I agree with that. What I was gonna say is, to change the situation, they could have sat down and collaborated with the family. But I think at the end of the day, the burden is kind of entirely on the school to ensure that they are maintaining an engaging environment for their online learners. Like it doesn't even have to be that big of a change. Like, for example, like in one of my science classes, you know how there's this like metal ball thing, and you like stick your finger above it and the lightning comes out and pricks your finger. Well, I was online, and every time, and it was a hybrid structure, some of my classmates were in school, and every time the teacher did that and the lightning came and tapped his finger, it just disconnected from the teams. So it was really funny. But we like tried to have a dialogue, and at the end of the day, they kind of changed the lesson so that it was still engaging for us, and they were still able to get like the lesson done. So if you're investing, if like schools and teachers are like, more than anything, if schools are really like investing in their students and just trying not to make it easier for themselves, and also to like engage those students who they're empathetic and understand that they're suffering too, then this wouldn't even be a problem in the first place.
Cool. So does this circumstance again align with your idea of a safe school environment?
I mean, no, because if I'm being fined $100 or $500 for something that's not even my fault, why would I feel like that's like a good school environment for like why would I feel like that's safe? It's just not.
I agree with Michael. And also in the article, it says that the teachers would like, as long as you do your work, that would be like counted as you being there. So it's not like, it seems like the teachers really didn't care whether the students were on the Google Meet or not. It just seemed like they cared more. So if the work was being done, which means that the students weren't being taught at all, they would just like freelance and like probably type in anything and get graded an A and also get graded like present. So that means that those sixth graders probably like, or people that went to that school in general probably missed like a whole year of learning, and they went into the next grade without even knowing how to do like work from the previous year.
Yeah, for sure. And we have some, students should not feel the pressures of creating a financial burden for their families. No, they're excluding children from school. Creates a harsh, punitive, stressful, and harmful environment. Yeah, for sure. Cool. Oop. Okay, awesome. Thank you guys for participating in this. The next thing we're gonna do, it's a Kahoot. I don't know if anybody knows what Kahoot is, but I'm gonna stop sharing my screen real quick so I can pull it up. Love a good Kahoot. Yeah, it's awesome. We have about 10 questions, so nothing crazy. Just make sure everybody's paying attention. This is the quiz. Cool. Okay, so right here, if you want to join, you can join from your phone, your laptop, whatever. You can, or if you just happen to have the Kahoot app. So you'll be www.kahoot.it, and then this is the game pin. So we'll ask you to put in, this when you start. So just kind of let me know in the chat when everybody's kind of hopped in or so. Okay, awesome. So you should have like the answers like on your phone or computer, whatever, but the question's going to pop up on the screen. So for many students of color, police presence in schools can cause blank. This is timed, just to put more pressure on everybody. Cool. So for many students of color, police presence in schools can cause trauma and negative experiences with law enforcement. Yes. Nice. Okay, question 2. Highlighting that violence is the only crisis in schools, blanks. Well, that was fast. Pushes out necessary resources that will set kids up for success. Okay. Okay. True or false? The presence of police in schools shift the focus from supporting students to over-disciplining and criminalizing them. Is this true or false? That's quick. Nice. Everybody got that one right. I would have been a little concerned. We had some false in there. Oh, Vanessa has the highest answer streak of 3. It's heating up, y'all. Okay, question 4. According to the Yukon report, 77% of surveyed SROs reported they'd arrested a student blank. Yeah, to calm them down. So yeah, this one was a little tricky because this is what's saying the report of that SRO. So they're saying that the reason they arrested a student was to calm them down. But I think we all may know otherwise. That may not be true. Okay, question 5. A survey found that in schools that are majority white and in suburban districts, SROs thought their purpose was blank. Cool. So SROs thought their purpose was to protect the students from outside threats in majority white districts. Yes. In schools mostly made up of racial minority students, SROs blank. Perceive the threats as students themselves. Okay. Blank of school suspensions were discretionary. What percent of school suspensions were discretionary? %97. Might have been wrong. Okay. According to a Villanova study, this is supposed to say discretionary discipline is blank percentage more likely to be used against students, against Black students. So what percent of that discretionary discipline is more likely to be used against Black students? Sorry for the wonky wording. Yeah, we got 31% more likely to be used against Black students. Okay, what is exclusionary discipline as a whole? We have all of the above: excluding students from their current setting, giving students unfair punishment, setting students back educationally. Okay, this is our last question. Let's see who's winning. Got Ali C. Okay, last question, y'all. What defines restorative justice? Yes, rehabilitative affected victims and young offenders. Let's see who won. Michael. Number 1. Let's see who won. Malicious thing. Yeah, so just thank you guys for being part of this and coming and listening to us for the last hour or so.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.